Hello YouTube. So today I want to talk about the evil demon. Okay, skepticism. So there's a classic skeptical argument that appeals to skeptical hypotheses. The brain in the vat is a skeptical hypothesis. If you don't know you're not a brain in a vat, you don't know you have hands. You don't know you're not a brain in a vat, so you don't know you have hands. So that's one skeptical hypothesis, but obviously that type of argument can be run with any number of skeptical hypotheses. So another skeptical hypothesis is maybe you're dreaming. If you don't know you're not dreaming, you don't know you have hands, you don't know you're not dreaming, so you don't know you have hands. Now, one of the most famous skeptical hypotheses comes from Descartes, who suggested the skeptical hypothesis, well, like imagine that actually there's a super powerful evil demon who is intent on deceiving me. And this evil demon is sort of generating all of the things that I seem to be perceiving, and he's kind of manipulating my brain to make my reasoning go wrong, and all of this stuff. But there's different ways of elaborating exactly how the evil demon hypothesis is supposed to work. But yeah, basically we have this super powerful being that is intent on deceiving you. Now, what I want to suggest in this video is that we have some reason for taking this hypothesis seriously. It's not just a logical possibility. There's actually reason to take it seriously, to think that it really might actually be true. So very often when we talk about these sorts of skeptical hypotheses, they are presented as mere logical possibilities. It's like there's just it's conceivable that there could be this evil demon, or it's conceivable that you're a brain in a vat, but there's no reason to actually think that these might hold, right? Like they're just mere logical possibilities. Now, some skeptical hypotheses actually have been taken a bit more seriously. So the simulation argument, for example, so there is an argument that we have positive empirical reasons to believe that our universe is a simulation. What's interesting about the simulation argument is that, okay, it's not just presenting this as a mere logical possibility, it's something that, yeah, we have positive reason to believe. And unfortunately with the simulation argument, I think it's very easy to sort of say, well, maybe there is a simulation, maybe all of this is simulated, but that's not going to lead to skepticism. Like the simulation hypothesis isn't really a skeptical hypothesis, because even if it turns out that all of this is a simulation, well, maybe that's just a sort of, surprising metaphysical discovery. Like maybe my hands, on a fundamental level, they're not made of like matter and particles. Maybe they're made of bits of information, but so what, right? I mean, just because they're made of bits of information, that doesn't mean that they're not hands. That doesn't mean that they're not legitimately real. David Chalmers talks about this in his book Reality Plus, which is a lot of fun. But what I like the idea of sort of thinking about these skeptical hypotheses and actually trying to find positive reasons to believe them. And I think that with the evil demon, we have some positive reasons to take that seriously. And so I just want to suggest, I want to present the argument for the evil demon hypothesis. So how do we get to the evil demon hypothesis? Okay, so the first point here is that anybody who is taking seriously the evil demon hypothesis, I think that they're probably going to be able to appeal to a bunch of traditional arguments that have been given in favor of the existence of God. So what we can do is, there's a whole bunch of arguments, right? There's like design arguments, cosmological arguments, all of these different arguments for God. We can appeal to these sorts of arguments in order to increase our confidence in the existence of a powerful creator, right? Because, I mean, ultimately, what a lot of these arguments seem to demonstrate, if you take something like the design argument, well, what that argument seems to demonstrate is that, okay, there is a powerful creator, but like, even if you think that the universe, is a product of design, that doesn't tell you anything about whether or not the creator is actually good, right? So, you might sort of take some of these arguments seriously and come to the conclusion that, okay, there is a creator, but there's no particular reason to think that this creator is omnibenevolent. And actually, this is a point that has been made by a lot of philosophers. One of the challenges to traditional theism is that it looks like we can find sort of mirror arguments. So whatever argument, the challenge is, hey, whatever argument the theist puts forward, I can give you a sort of mirror argument for an evil god or an anti-god. And there's a big debate about that. Stephen Law has done some stuff on this evil god challenge. Peter Millikan has written a bit about it as well. But okay, like the point is like all we really need for the purposes of the evil demon hypothesis is, okay, we have a bunch of arguments which maybe increase our confidence that there is some creator, some very powerful creator. Now then I want to say, well, if we've got that established, then I would want to say that there are reasons to take seriously the idea that, that this creator is actually evil, or at least not entirely good. I actually personally would probably be more inclined, if I had to pick between, good God and an evil God, I'd probably be more inclined to go with the evil God, for a few reasons. I mean, I think for one of the things that's interesting when we sort of look at the nature of existence is that it seems to be sort of set up in such a way that it kind of like seems to be aiming towards pain and suffering. Consider, for instance, the fact that the worst pains are much more distressing than the best pleasures are enjoyable. Like the degree of suffering associated with the worst pains seems to be like just greater than the degree of enjoyment or the degree of goodness that you get from the best pleasures. So there's an interesting asymmetry there, right? Like it's almost like things are weighted in favor of pain for some reason. Moreover, I think there's this interesting tendency for, if you think about your life, right? The tendency is for pains to increase over time. One thing that happens, like, I think as you grow from being, like a baby into, a child and then into an adult, is you start to kind of understand more. And like the more that you understand, the greater the degree of suffering can be. Like if you have, say, a toothache as a child, then it's just the pain. There's like just the kind of physical pain. Like if you're an infant or something and the tooth is aching, okay, it's just the physical pain. As you get older, okay, and you have a toothache, well, suddenly there's like a whole load of baggage that comes along with that, where you're thinking, like, how long is this going to last? What does this mean? Is this going to spread? Is my tooth going to fall out? Like, what's going to happen to me? And so there's this sort of further layer of suffering. And then, of course, as you get older and older, your body starts to break down. Things get harder. Your body gets sort of slower. You start getting random pains, for no apparent reason. Stuff just starts going wrong. And so the overall, like, the general tendency of a person's life seems to be towards pain. Moreover, notice how, if you think about, like, sensations have this tendency to resolve into pains at the extreme. So if I take something that's, like, very hot or very cold, so I start with feelings of temperature, and then, if I've got like warm water and then I gradually increase the temperature or gradually decrease the temperature, right? Like, okay, it's getting hotter, it's getting colder, and then in both cases it will resolve into pain. Or if you look at a really bright light and then increase the brightness, you start out with a visual sensation. It's just visual. But then as it gets brighter and brighter, the vision resolves into pain. And even pleasure, when you increase pleasure enough, can often become painful. That can happen. There can be a too much pleasure. There can be like a sense of being overwhelmed with pleasure, and then it becomes painful. It becomes a source of suffering. And so the general point then is, like, I look at all of this and I'm like, okay, so we have this sort of tendency, like it's almost as though, the universe sort of aims towards pain. If I was inclined to think in terms of teleology, then I might say there's like some sort of teleological direction where it's like the universe is just developing towards more and more pain or something like that. It's like that seems to be where it's aiming. That's the goal, is pain. And I'm just thinking, well, that sort of thing is more likely if the creator is a bit of is not the most pleasant individual, right? Like that seems like something that would incline me personally to endorse an evil god, or at least not a perfectly good god. Okay, so with that sort of set up then, that's kind of the background here, where it's like, all right, so we have these arguments for a creator, and then and then the case for the creator is such that it's not clearly going to favour a good creator, and maybe there are some positive reasons to think the creator might not be good. Moreover, I think there's this interesting feature of reality, which is that it strikes me to be as being kind of blatantly obvious that the world is just totally deceptive. Now, look, of course, I'm going to say that I'm somebody who is very, I find myself very attracted by a lot of like radical skeptical arguments. I've talked about this at length in many recent videos. But look, even if you endorse a more sort of conventional model, even if you're like a bog standard physicalist, scientific realist, whatever, there's still some sense, I think, in which the world is like strikingly deceptive. So from the kind of standard physicalist view, well, first of all, you're going to have to say that, like, the appearances in perception and our intuitions about the way that reality works are actually significantly misleading. Like, we really have to it takes a great deal of work to, like, probe beyond the appearances. And, like, what's really going on is kind of hidden from us. And actually, the way the appearances work kind of have a tendency to, mislead us, right? So it's like, the process of inquiry seems to have revealed like deception at the level of appearance, and then at each further sort of level that we go, as we start penetrating further and further into how the world works, you often find that models and theories that are appropriate at specific scales of analysis or in specific contexts can, they're idealizations which on further investigation will be shown to contain falsehoods. It's just generally the case that, in science, we have like just idealization everywhere, so idealization is just proliferates throughout science. So like even once you penetrate beyond the appearances, you're still then generating models of things where like in order to kind of get to the truth, you have to have these false and idealized models. So there's like just layers and layers of deception almost. And of course, we also just have like very direct experiences of radical deception because we experience like global deception every night in our dreams. Like literally every night. You go to sleep every single night and you're just deceived. You're in this fake world. So what I want to say is, well, there's this something about reality where it does seem to have a kind of deceptive character in the same way that like there's pain, right? There just seems to be deception sort of everywhere. At least that's a plausible way, I think, of looking at things. And of course, a very straightforward explanation for the deceptive character of the world is that we are literally being deceived. Of course, there is a question here, which is, well, okay, I've just said that it's blatantly obvious that the world is deceptive. Why would the evil demon make it obvious that it's a deception? I mean, why would you make the deception obvious? I actually think that makes perfect sense, though, because a deception is generally more satisfying when it is blatantly obvious. But that people, the subjects of the deception, are deceived by it anyway, which of course is what happens, right? Like most people, right, just take it that they kind of know how reality works. So if it is a deception, then most people have been taken in by it, even though the deception is blatantly obvious. And that's the most satisfying way of running a deception, I think, is to make the deception just really obvious, but then people are deceived by it anyway. So I want to say, okay, maybe that gives us some reason. The deceptive character of the world. Maybe that sort of gives us some reason to take. We have at least an explanation in the evil demon hypothesis. A final point here is that there are, I think, interesting there are interesting pragmatic constraints on our beliefs. So in the literature it's called pragmatic encroachment, but I think that pragmatic factors do seem to influence our levels of confidence in certain beliefs. So the classic example of this is, let's say that let's say that you're thinking of depositing some money in a bank, right? And so scenario number one is, all right, you've got £100 to deposit in the bank, and it doesn't really matter when it gets done, So let's say that it's Friday, and you assume that the bank is going to be open tomorrow. You can't really be bothered to go today. Maybe you've got other things that you want to do. Maybe you've just come home from work. You can't really be bothered to go to the bank. So you're like, well, I'll go to the bank tomorrow. I'll go to the bank on Saturday. So again, in this case, you have to deposit the £100, but it's not urgent, right? I mean, you could do it on Saturday, but you could just as well do it on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday. There's no urgency. And so the thought is that in that situation, you're justified in believing that the bank, why do you think that the bank is going to be open on Saturday? Well, you just kind of remember that it was open at that time. You think you remember the opening times of the bank. You kind of have this recollection of going there on Saturday before, and you assume that it's still going to be open this Saturday, that sort of thing. So you don't really have much justification. There's not many reasons you're going to be able to cite, but the thought is, well, yeah, you've got enough, right? You seem to remember that the bank was open on Saturday, and in that situation, yeah, we're happy to say you're justified in believing that the bank is going to be open on Saturday. Second case is, again, you've got £100 to deposit, but now you really do have to get that £100 in on Saturday because you've got rent to pay or something, you've got bills to pay, and if you don't get it in by Saturday, then something bad's going to happen, right? You're maybe going to get fined or something. So there's some reason why it really matters that you have to get this in on Saturday. Well, in that situation, so again, let's say you've come home from work, you got the £100, you're thinking of depositing it to the bank, and you say, well, I remember that the bank was open on Saturday, and I seem to remember going there at a Saturday before, and so I'm going to take it that I know the bank is open on Saturday. In that situation, the story goes at least, we're less inclined to say that you're justified in believing that the bank is going to be open on Saturday. And why? Well, because it matters, and because you have very little reason to believe that, and it really matters. It really makes a difference. So the point is there are these pragmatic factors, right? So whether or not the stakes are high or low, that's going to make a difference to what you're justified in believing. So, in case one, where it's low stakes, you're justified in believing that the bank will be open on Saturday. In case two, where the stakes are high, you're not justified in believing that the bank will be open on Saturday. So this is just one example of how pragmatic factors maybe influence beliefs. Now, with that all said then, I think that, look, when we think about the evil demon hypothesis, arguably it promotes what might well be an overlooked theoretical virtue, which is a virtue of deception resistance. So I might think that it's really important not to be a sucker. And so I'm going to say, you know what, I will organize my beliefs in such a way as to minimize the chances of people deceiving me. For me, being made a fool of, being made a sucker, that's a really bad outcome. That's kind of a disastrous outcome. It's one thing to hold a false belief, right? A false belief. Maybe I sort of look out the window and I think I see a dog out there. There isn't actually a dog out there. I'm mistaken. That's not really a big deal. But if what's going on out there is that somebody has set up some sort of situation intended to deceive me into believing there's a dog out there, that would really bother me, I don't want to be deceived. I don't want to be made a sucker. Now, by believing the evil demon hypothesis, it seems like I'm insulating myself from the possibility of being ensnared by the greatest deception imaginable. Um, and of course, there's two things to note here, right? First of all, right, I might think to myself, look, I really don't want to be a sucker. It'd be really bad if I was made a sucker. But then the other side to this coin is that when you detect a deception, that feels very satisfying. It's like really good. It's really positive to have detected that a deception is going on. I think this is probably why so many people find it satisfying to believe in global conspiracy theories, right? Like, I mean, the idea that like we have figured out, right, what the, like there's some sort of group of powerful elites who are manipulating things behind the scenes, and like I've figured out what they're doing. I've seen through their deception. Oh yes, that feels very nice. And like it probably there's some kind of like comfort that you gain, or sort of sense of like a sense of knowing how things really work, a sense of like seeing through the deception. That can be a very positive feeling. And of course, the evil demon hypothesis. Well, look, the evil demon is the greatest conspiracy of them all. So I would then so look, there's actually a kind of pragmatic case for this, right? Like, and I mean, I think this is probably similar to the way that some people think about belief in God, right? Like, I mean, William James has a classic defense of belief in God, that all right, this is something that is, it's not kind of clearly decided by the available empirical evidence. This is something that is it's a a question which is forced, like, you either believe or you don't believe, and it's a question which is momentous, like it's going to make a practical difference, so there's going to be some sort of pragmatic consequences from the choice you make here. And well, look, the same is true for the evil demon, right? Like, yeah, there isn't any sort of clear slam dunk case, obviously, for the evil demon, but the choice is forced. You either believe in the evil demon or you don't. And maybe the choice is momentous. I mean, if you are somebody who cares a lot about deception resistance, then this is a momentous choice. So what I'm suggesting here is there are certain considerations that favour the evil demon, and then there is this like pragmatic virtue of deception resistance. And I think if we put all of this together, maybe we should take seriously the idea that we are actually being deceived by an evil demon. Why am I saying we? Why would I even believe that there's any of you? Me. I'm being deceived by an evil demon. It's just me. That's all that there is. There's me and the evil demon. Or maybe not. Maybe the evil demon has created a whole world and he's deceiving all of us. But yeah, I'm just putting that out there. And the reason why I find this interesting is because, look, I think the evil demon hypothesis is very clearly a skeptical hypothesis, right? Like the simulation argument, well, maybe we can say with something like the simulation argument, yeah, okay, maybe there's like positive reasons to take this seriously, so, I'm going to increase my credence in the simulation hypothesis to like 20%. I think David Chalmers goes for 25% or something in Reality Plus. But then you just say, well, the simulation hypothesis, that's not really a skeptical hypothesis, it's just a metaphysical hypothesis or something like that. I don't think that move's going to work with the evil demon. Like, the evil demon really is a skeptical hypothesis, and I don't know, I mean, maybe there's some reasons to take the evil demon hypothesis seriously. Maybe we should be like, look, I'm not saying I've got a slam dunk case here, but like, maybe 5% credence, 10% credence, I don't know. So there you go, the case for the evil demon. Thanks for watching.